I've got to ask you this question because you get a different perspective than probably anybody else on the planet about this. And I've asked some of them this question, but is there something that you have seen as a common denominator that makes goats goats? And what I mean is, if you look at athletes and you see somebody like a Tom Brady or a Michael Jordan, and you look at their reaction time, their speed in the 40, their strength on the bench press or whatever, there may not be that big a difference between them and somebody on the practice squad or somebody that didn't make the cut. What, in your opinion, makes the greatest of all time in their sport? Is there a common denominator that you see cut across these men and women that make them the greatest?
They all go about it differently, but I can see something common. They all have touched perfection from one moment to another, but they all want to hold it and grasp it, and it's like a jellyfish, and it just slips through their fingers. But when they touch it, it's like being an addict. They want to touch it again and again and again because they know they can. And I asked Kobe Bryant about that at one point, and he said, look, I'm a realist. I know perfection is unattainable, but it sure is a heck of a lot of fun trying. And that's what they do. Brady has had the perfect quarter, the perfect comeback, the perfect game, almost a perfect season, even though they lost to the Giants. So he's been there and he's won 6 times. So many people would say after one, that's enough. These guys never have enough because they want it more and more. And the best example I could really give you, Dr. Phil, is think about Michael Phelps for just a moment. Michael Phelps spent the majority of his adult life underwater, staring at a black line, day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out. For what reason? So that he could figure out how to be an eyelash or a fingernail ahead of somebody else from the rest of the world so that he could win those 28 medals and those 23 gold medals. So he was tormented by that, but nobody else has ever done it. He's the most decorated ever. But think about the mental anguish. And he did a beautiful documentary about this on HBO within the past 6 or 8 months. Think about the mental anguish of putting everything else in your life aside to do that. But while you're doing that, all of this that's going in your life has to go through your mind because you're just staring at a black line. Now think about that. How many people on the planet can have that discipline? Well, I can name a few of them. Tiger Woods, Michael Phelps, Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, Tom Brady, Floyd Mayweather. There's just so very few. Serena Williams. And there you have it. I mean, so that's why they're so special and that's why they're GOATs.
Yeah, that's a drive that comes from inside. I don't think you can coach it. I mean, from a psychological perspective, I don't think that's something you can instill in people. It's got to be a hunger that comes from inside. And I think if you can ever figure out how to coach that, instill that, role model that, in some way communicate that in a way that somebody can emulate or embrace. Jim, if you and I could figure out how to bottle that, we'd put Bill Gates in the shade. But I don't know how you do that. And maybe there's that extra level of talent, that extra vision or something, but it's got to come down to that drive. It's got to come down to that where they're willing to make the sacrifice and that singularness of purpose. I just believe that to be true.
Well, there's a form of immortality that goes into this. And if it was easy, everybody would do it, but it's not easy. And that's why we have so few who we can look at and say, there they are. And, then there's all of these things that come in. It's not just hard work and dedication. It's proper coaching and mentorship. And it's, the confluence of events that stack all this up. Luck is also involved in it. I know that Coach Wooden used to say, the harder I work, the more luck I get, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
So, there's that as well. But when you see what these guys go through, I get to go every summer up to Yellowstone National Park and see Tom Brady work out. He goes up there with his private trainer and a couple of his friends, sometimes some of the receivers that he works with, Danny Amendola, perhaps Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman. They've all joined him over the years. Not every year, but from time to time. And if you see what this guy puts in, and this is the week and the month before training camp at altitude.
Right.
And he's trying to get that perfect throw to a bunch of guys, some of us 60 years old plus, and he's out there working that, and he is as engaged in that as he will be trying to win a Super Bowl, because he has to get the mechanics right. And if he leaves that field that morning, he will not leave until he gets it right. And if that means it's another 20 minutes or another hour, he'll stand there with his coach, Alex Guerrero, his personal coach and confidant, and he will get it right. Well, I'm sure it's the same exact thing. I know it is with Tiger Woods. Just think about what that took after all of the surgeries to not win a major from 2008 to 2019. Yet that's the only way he measures himself. To have the neck surgery, the back surgery, the knee surgeries, the scandal, the emotional problems that he had to endure, the psychological problems, the hitting of the fire hydrant, the DUI, and then to come back and do that 11 years later at the age of 43.
Yeah. And when you don't need to work another day in your life financially, because there are different kinds of currency. There's social currency, spiritual currency, there's psychological currency, and there's that achievement currency. I believe they are driven by a different kind of currency than everybody else. Because if you're doing it for the money, you're long past it by then.
That's a great, great point. It reminds me of a film that Bud Greenspan, who I mentioned earlier, did. And everybody listening should go watch this film. It's online on YouTube. It's called The Last African Runner. It's a story about John Stephen Akwari of Tanzania in 1968, the Olympic Games. And I won't ruin it. I'll give you the 30-second Reader's Digest. Everybody had gone home. The closing ceremonies were over. He was running in the hour and a half after the race ended. And there was John Stephen Akwari in the middle of the street still running with a broken kneecap. And he finished the race. He finished the race to an empty stadium. The flame had been doused. Everybody had gone back to their home countries, okay? And here was John Stephen Akwari of Tanzania, because it was so beautifully written by Bud. A voice calls from within to go on, so he goes on. And so he was asked after the race. In fact, I asked him in 1984, and Bud had asked him several times, why did you finish the race? And he said, my country, Tanzania, saw fit to send me 5,000 miles away to this race. They didn't send me to start the race. They sent me to finish the race.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that's a driven individual. And they say integrity is what you do when nobody's watching. And that's what he did when nobody was watching. Everybody had gone home. That's for damn sure.
I'll just never forget that line written by Bud Greenspan. His brother was a great narrator, a man named David Perry. A voice calls from within to go on. So he goes on. And then the last line in it is, all honor to John Stephen Akwari of Tanzania. Well, that's what these guys do. They honor themselves, they honor their families, they honor the sport, they honor their countries, and they honor humanity when they do this stuff.
Absolutely. That's something we should all aspire to. You wrote a book about talking to goats, and in all humility and candor, you definitely will be in someone else's book about goats, because when it comes to doing what you do as a broadcaster, you are definitely the greatest of all time at what you do. So what drives Jim Gray? What keeps you going after all this?
This life that I've been able to lead and all of the people that I've been able to meet, I mean, it's been so fantastic. I mean, it's just been great. And I love meeting the people, and I love listening to their stories. And I want to, hear how they did it, why they did it, and, try and see if what I can do in these interviews can help somebody else and help future generations so that we can have more goats. And so I'm driven to hear other people's stories, to learn from them. And I want to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. I can still improve. I've done tens of thousands of interviews. I've done one or two of them right. Otherwise, I've stumbled, or I forgot about something, or I didn't follow up right, or how many times do you walk away from a show, Dr. Phil, and you watch it and you say, boy, I should have asked this, or why did I stumble on that question? I'm still trying to get it right.
Every single show.
Exactly.
Every single show.